Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 653, written by PredsjednikPlanete. What's the point of a car that can just teleport? This happened to me about 2 years ago. I was driving on a detour road next to the city so I wouldn't get stuck in the city's rush hour. At the end of that road, there is an intersection with 2 lanes going left to a one-way road and the right lane that goes to the airport. I remember another car getting so close behind me that I cursed something about it. The light went green and we started driving. I turned left and looked in my inner mirror to see where the car was because I got mad recently, and he was nowhere to be seen. I kept looking behind because I thought he might have gone right at the very last second. He didn't. There were no cars around me anywhere. I thought about it for the next 5 minutes and kinda let it go. Fast forward to one day when I'm with my friend talking about random things in life. He starts talking about how something strange happened to him in the same spot. I knew what he was going to say before he even said it. I let him speak and I was correct. The same intersection. He was going left and after turning, the cars behind him weren't there anymore. This was the only glitch in the Matrix that I remember experiencing, and it was shared with my friend. Case notes, file number 653. You know, it makes you wonder, were those cars bound to our reality, our dimension? There's tons of objects that disappear and return. The exact cause of this is unknown. Maybe there are entities in another pocket dimension that are pulling them in, just to examine and study them. It stands to reason that they would want to study larger objects, but why at this specific intersection? You'd think that would make it more obvious, and that if in fact these are entities, they would want to remain incognito. So maybe it isn't entities, maybe it is some sort of ley-line force in this exact spot that is pulling objects in. I wonder if they come back, and obviously, what about all the people inside of them? Or was it merely a perception glitch? The cars were never there. You just perceive them to be, for some reason. That it also happened to your friend does lead me to the idea that it is some kind of force in that specific intersection area. I wonder if all the people in those cars perceive themselves as having jumped ahead a few miles or something. There's many stories about people being ported ahead in cars especially, so maybe it's related to that. Creepy file number 25, written by StinkyHo 13, The Shadow of the Night. This story occurred a few years back. I would have been around 8 or 9 at the time. My old bedroom sat facing out towards the street and also happened to be right next to our front door. It was very small as it had been built in place of our old front porch. The roof was slightly slanted downward towards the window, which took up most of the wall, and the bed could only fit in one way. It was painted purple, not a nice purple either, like a kid's bedroom, of course. My bed sat facing towards the door to my bedroom, parallel to the window. A closet took a part of the corner between my bedroom door and the window, making for an unusual space. Every night, I checked to make sure the curtains were shut all the way, as the idea of people watching from the street made me very uncomfortable, even at a young age where things like that shouldn't even cross my mind. Every night, I slept soundly, no nightmares. No sudden noises waking me in the middle of the night, nothing like that. That was until the middle of the year, during a school break. I remember waking to the sound of someone breathing. I couldn't move, I couldn't catch my own breath, I was just stuck. I remember so clearly seeing a man standing in the corner of my room, stuck partly behind the curtain as if it would hide him. Of course I could see him. He was just this dark entity who stood and watched. After what felt like hours, I was able to get back to sleep. In the morning, I told my mom about it and what had happened, and she explained it was just a strange nightmare and that I was fine, but the way she said it wasn't very believable. These cases of sleep paralysis went on for about a year, taking me up to the middle of the next year when I was likely 8 or 9. I remember waking in the middle of the night just like I had most nights for the last year, to the man in the corner, only this time, I could move. I stayed absolutely still, despite now knowing he was actually there. This wasn't sleep paralysis. I could hear his faint breathing, like he was trying to hide from me as much as I was trying to hide from him. I couldn't help but think, has this man been here every night this year? I remember the thoughts I had, how I'd run out of the room and scream for my mom, how she'd call the police, how this man would be arrested and sent away. But I couldn't do that. He was basically in front of the door. I spent the night staring at him, trying to fall asleep. I'd say it was around 5 a.m. I was able to drift off, just sort of as the birds started to wake up. I woke up and lo and behold, he was gone. The first thing I did was tell my mom. She already looked uneasy, like she already knew. That's when I heard two people talking outside. I found out later the people outside were my neighbor and a police officer who was taking an eyewitness statement. Around 6 in the morning, our neighbor spotted a man standing outside my window. She called the police, but he was gone before they arrived. Other neighbors stepped forward, saying they'd seen him outside in the middle of the day, looking at our house. There were no signs of forced entry, only 2 footprints in the flower bed outside my window. My mother told the officers my account of what had happened, and they came to the conclusion that he'd done the same thing last year. I saw it, and it sparked my tangent of sleep paralysis. The streetlight outside projected his shadow, so it appears as though he was standing in my room. This whole time, he'd been waiting patiently outside my room. Who knows what would have happened if my neighbor didn't spot him on her way out for work? Just a few more minutes and she would have missed him entirely. Bonus file, written by Alethi Will Shaper. A dark force occupies my hospital. So, to preface this, I work in a hospital on the SCU, monitoring patients' heart rates. Additionally, I also do not have any mental illness aside from seasonal depression and anxiety, since I know the first thing someone is going to say is, maybe you should get checked for psychosis. Yesterday, I was doing my normal routine of running patient reports to the different floors that we monitor, and after having a bit of an annoying encounter with a nurse who yelled at me, I was brooding a bit as I walked down the hall. I had my eyes on the floor as I walked, and as I got towards the ICU, so that I could access the stairwell. Our hospital is fairly small, so the SCU and the ICU share a floor. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a person standing by the elevator staring at me. So like I normally do, I looked up to ask if they needed any help with anything, and for the millisecond that I made eye contact, what I saw was truly horrible. It was a being composed entirely of black or wearing all black, except for his hands. It had these long claws that were unnaturally white, like it hadn't seen sunshine in years, and I couldn't see the face for some reason, but I know it had these big bulging eyes set recessed into its head. The moment I saw it, truly saw it, I froze in place and blinked because it was startling. I didn't feel terrified, but it did make me uncomfortable. And when I opened my eyes from that quick blink, it had disappeared. I'm not sure what I saw, but this isn't the first time I've seen something in that building. Bonus file, written by Anonymous. My son sent us a sign. I would really like to share this experience with you guys. I've never told anyone this before because when I talk about stuff like this, people look at me like I'm nuts, but I'm not. A little backstory. My son died when he was 3 years old, back in 2018. He had cancer and battled it all his life. Fast forward to 2020. I was living in a house with my mom and sister and her boyfriend. We were sitting in our garage one night and all of a sudden, we saw a light flickering on a shelf in the very back of the garage. My sister's boyfriend went to see what it was. The light was coming from one of my mom's old phones that had been sitting in that spot for 2 years. It was all busted up and had never been charged in those 2 years. My sister's boyfriend picked it up and it stopped blinking. We tried to turn it on, but it was dead. We didn't think anything of it at first and sat it down on one of my son's Mickey Mouse coloring books. As soon as that phone touched his coloring book, it started flashing again. He picked it up and it stopped flashing. Set it down again on the coloring book and again it started flashing. At this point, I was calling out to my son to see if it was him. I was asking him to give me a sign that it was him, and then the phone turned on. There was a random jumble of letters and numbers on the screen, but right there amongst the jumbled letters and numbers, it said Mickey Mouse. At that point, I knew it was him. I cried hysterically. We all did. We went inside with the phone and showed it to my mom and told her what happened. She couldn't believe it. The phone stopped flashing and I held it for a few hours to see if it would do it again. We were all about to go to bed, so my sister stood up and turned off the living room light. I set the phone down on our fireplace in the living room by a little cross and Bible. We were all about to go to our rooms when the light on the phone came on again. The light on the phone was pointed directly at the cross and casted a big shadow on the cross. The shadow of the cross covered one of our entire living room walls. All of our mouths dropped wide open. We all knew he was showing us a sign that he was okay. We all prayed together and talked to him that night. After that, the phone never turned on again, never flashed a light again either. I tried to charge it the next day and it never turned on. This is one of many experiences we've had since he died. It just lets me know there's more out there than we will ever be able to understand.